Hey guys, Moniz here, and welcome to my review of the Sony Xperia XZ2. I mean, as soon as you look at this phone, you're gonna notice a few things. First and foremost, it doesn't look like every other Sony phone you've seen in the past 50 years. They've redesigned it this year to make it a lot more attractive and to bring it into 2017 standards. Now you're saying, Matt, why not 2018? Well, because it doesn't have those thin bezels that most phones have, and most importantly, and thankfully, it doesn't have a notch. I'm okay if it doesn't have super thin bezels because a device this size feels really comfortable to hold in your hands. It still has a glass back, so you still get wireless charging. It is water resistant, so if you drop it in the pool, you don't have to worry about it. And a cool thing about this device is the fact that I don't need a pin to take out my SIM card. You simply dig your fingers in, take out the SIM tray, and plop it back in with ease. That's kind of neat. Not too many manufacturers are doing that. But it's not perfect. It's not a very comfortable phone to hold, and that's because it's a little bit top heavy. You're gonna need a case for this. I suggest a very thin one, and once you put it on, the device will feel very comfortable in the hand. There is a dedicated button. I know a lot of you are saying, oh my God, not another dedicated button. Samsung has a button for Bixby, the LG has a button for Google Assistant, but Sony's not doing any of that. They have a much more useful dedicated button, and that's directly to get to the camera. I find that a lot more useful to have a camera shutter or a camera button to get me to the camera quicker than having a button that's going to annoy me like Bixby. To be honest, my only real major complaint about this design is the fingerprint scanner placement. You see, my finger naturally goes to the camera, and that's a problem because that means you're gonna be tapping it a lot and getting smudges over it. If you wanna get to the fingerprint scanner, you have to bend your finger and go below it. It's just not intuitive for us because we're used to kind of going to the same spot where the camera is. Now, it's not as bad as the Galaxy S8 from last year where you had the fingerprint scanner beside it. It's just not the best design decision. Speaking of design decisions, I'm glad Sony's retaining the dual speaker setup. They sound fantastic. They're definitely an improvement over mono speakers. They're both forward facing, so you don't have one on the bottom that's shooting somewhere else. But if you want to know if it's better than the Galaxy S9 or the iPhone 10, it's pretty comparable in terms of overall volume, but I personally think the iPhone 10 and Galaxy S9 sound a bit better because they have a more balanced sound spectrum. I find the Sony Xperia XZ2 tends to favor the highs. So if you're a gamer and you appreciate good sound to game on your smartphone, if you just love listening to music, you're gonna appreciate the dynamic vibration system they have inside of here. Basically, Sony put a separate piece of hardware very similar to 3D Touch on the iPhone that basically vibrates the phone every time you do something specific. So if you're playing a game and you're shooting your gun or you're being shot at, you're gonna have this deep vibration that feels fantastic while you're holding the device. The same holds true while you're listening to music. If you want the phone to vibrate while the bass is pumping, you have that option as well. Now, I personally don't like it for music, but it's a fantastic feature for gamers. And if for whatever reason you don't like this new dynamic vibration system, you have the option to turn it off. The display is Full HD, IPS, and supports HDR. So if you're hoping for an AMOLED panel, you're not gonna find it in this device. But to be honest, I'm kind of glad they're not using an AMOLED panel on a full HD display. You see, most AMOLED panels that are in phones like the OnePlus 5T or even the P20 Pro, they look good, but they're just not great. They're usually the inferior displays from Samsung, which they tend to keep the better ones for their products like the Galaxy S9 or sell them to Apple for the iPhone 10. But the IPS display on the XZ2 is super bright, you get great color reproduction, and the text is nice and sharp. Performance is what you'd expect on a 2018 flagship. You're gonna get the standard Snapdragon 845. In this case, it's using 4 GB of RAM. I would have loved to see 6, but usually with smaller devices, 4 is the standard. But to be honest, I didn't have any issues with lag. Things didn't feel slow. Overall, the phone feels nice and smooth. I also love the fact that Sony doesn't completely bloat their device down with random applications and software theming that gets in the way. There's a little bit of Sony in here to make it different from what's out there, but it's not overbearing and you get a bit of stock Android shining through. But there was one situation where there was a little bit of lag, and that's when I was using the camera application. I didn't focus as fast as the Galaxy S9 or iPhone 10. It was a little bit slower than most flagships of 2018, but it wasn't as bad as, let's say, the Essential phone. I think that's one area that Sony needs to kind of fine tune. Now, since we're on the topic of the camera, I'm not gonna go into crazy detail about how good this camera is. I actually did a great comparison, which I think sums everything up against the Galaxy S9. There's a link in the description down below if you wanna check that out. But here's what I will say. This camera is a great camera. In fact, I think it does a better job than a lot of the smartphones that are on the market right now. I don't think a lot of people are giving credit to this camera. I compared it to the Galaxy S9, and in almost every single situation, it offered better dynamic range, a more natural photo, and didn't have as much processing or over sharpening in the photo itself. You also get great things like slow motion at 960 frames per second, but at 1080p. No other phone's doing that right now. The most you can get is 720. You also get 4K HDR recording. I was actually kind of surprised how good this looks when you're using it. Here's an example of 4K regular, looks great, but when you bump it up to 4K HDR, you're using a little bit of a different codec, you get more fidelity, and there's more data to be used, overall presenting a better picture. Now, before I wrap this up, I just want to talk about battery life. My God, the battery life in this device is fantastic. I was expecting some pretty poor results just due to the size of the phone and the size of the battery, but I was getting just as good battery life as my P20 Pro, and that battery has 4,000 milliamps. I easily get through a day and a half of use before needing to charge. I get about 6 hours of screen on time, which is very rare for me. Most Android phones I've used, I get about 3.5 to 4 hours. Easily crushed in 6 hours of use. I got the wireless charging. I also have quick charge in case I need to top it up quickly. So here's my closing thoughts. I don't think there's anything special about this device. There's not one feature that really sticks out compared to everything else on the market. But the one thing that Sony did well this year is produce a fantastic, consistent experience. Does it have the best display? Nope. Does it have the best design? Subjective, but I think no. Does it have the best sound experience? No, other devices do that. But what it does have is a great experience across the board and a fantastic camera. Now, if you want something that's comfortable, a consistent experience, then I suggest taking a look at the Xperia XZ2. If you want the best display, there's another company that does that well. If you're an audiophile and you want the best audio experience, there's another company that does that a little bit better. Overall, I gotta commend Sony for producing a great phone. I think they set up a platform to produce better devices as years go forward. So what do you guys think of the Sony Xperia XZ2? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and follow me on Instagram. I got a lot of great photos that I think you guys are going to want to check out. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.